Welcome, my people, to another episode of Exclusive Visions podcast, Love, Life, and Business, where we discuss real life business matters, and issues that matter to you. Now, today we have a real special guest in the building or online right now. This is the first interactive online session that we are going to have, and I am so happy to have her. We attempted to do this earlier this year, it didn't happen because of lockdown, persevered, and now she is here. But before she introduces herself, you know how this is right now. Subscribe to the channel if you like the content that we're putting now. Share this, ring that notification bell, and more importantly, we have that Patreon stuff going on right now. So choose your package, stop being tight, people, and support what we're doing. So, as I said, we have a special guest in the building today. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. My special guest, introduce yourself. Let the world know who you are.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me, guys. My name is Annie Gibbs, and I am the founder of Amour Destiné, a community interest company that supports Black and Black mixed race women in London who've experienced trauma in care or have experienced some form of abuse, to overcome those traumas and to rebuild their lives. So that's what I do. That's who I am.
Okay. So we met, when did we meet again? We met at, was it the Rector's event? Yes, it was on a panel. Yes. And I just loved your energy. And from there, it was like, yes, I definitely got to hear this woman's story, because you captivated me on the day in regards to what you did, how you even started. But I'm gonna let you tell that story better than I can. So first question to you is, why did you start your business? What was your inspiration?
Well, I started Amour Destiné in tribute to my mum, because when I was 8 years old, I lost my mum, and I was always kind of like frustrated, like growing up as a child with like my memories of her as a survivor of abuse, because when I was living with her, we moved around to like various like refuges and things, and I just remember her struggling, going from like service to service. She didn't have a network here in the UK because she was from Mali. And I just wanted to do something which was going to bring alive like her legacy, something I couldn't do to help her. But also what I found as I was a young adult myself, I was also in abusive situations. I was sexually assaulted when I was 16, and I didn't know where to go and find help. I didn't tell anybody, and actually that then continued on with like my journey of frustration. And then other women, when I started doing my events to raise awareness of like domestic abuse and stuff, I was finding we're also having similar like problems with like not knowing where to go and find help. So then I decided I wanted to do something about it, and I launched Amour Destiné to try and just create a solution, and as I said, in tribute to my mum. So yeah, that's why I started it.
Okay, so when you gave yourself that platform to talk about what you went through, did you, like, as you quite rightly just said, women came to you and they also shared similar stories to you? Did you see this quite happening a lot? The more you shared your story, the more women who've been through similar circumstances came to you?
Actually, it didn't start off with me sharing my own story. It's taken me a really long time to share my like story of like my own like experiences of abuse. My mum's experiences most definitely I found was bringing women to my service who really needed it, that really resonated with some of the problems that she experienced, because she was Malian, she had language barriers, she didn't know how to access services. So those are some of the key things that were coming to my service initially. So it's really my mum's story. But as I've become more sort of on a healing journey for like about my own abuse, and actually realizing that it's okay for me to also accept and acknowledge that I am also a survivor. It's allowed me to start talking about my journey, and that has again brought a completely different type of service user to my service, because I was raised in the UK care system. So some of those experiences and layers of troubles that I experience are bringing people to my service who resonate with my journey. So not only the fact that I'm a survivor of abuse, but also that I've been raised in care, and that I've been able to overcome some of those challenges, and women like come and use my service, especially some of the young care leavers, you know, really are inspired by the fact that actually I've overcome so much, and then they say to me, well, I've been through hardly any of what you've been through, and if you can push through those things, then, you know, I'm really grateful for your support, and I'm going to make sure I get myself to this goal. So yeah, so my story has definitely opened up opportunity to support others who have experienced similar things to me.
Okay, and listen, my hat's off to you for the wonderful work that you have been doing to now. You have been doing up to now, and I know many women are grateful for what you have done and create that platform and environment for people to literally get that healing and support. So my question to you now, just hearing what you're saying, how big an issue is this statistically within the UK? Yes, women get abused, people get abused full stop across like men, women, children. But in regards to the people that you look after, I believe is it Black or African and Caribbean women who get abused? Yeah. What are the statistics like? What is the like? Paint a picture of what this really looks like within the UK. What are we looking at?
Okay, so if you're looking at service users like mine, I would probably say that 90% of the women who use my service are survivors of abuse. And when I talk about abuse, I mean it could be from sexual violence to domestic violence, to being trafficked for sexual exploitation in the UK. And there are so many various forms of abuse. So in my service, 90% of those women have experienced a form of abuse. In the UK, women are affected more than men by abuse, which is the reason why my service and many other great services helping women is so needed in the UK. And one of the things that I want to raise actually is that it's such a big issue in the UK, because not everybody knows how to find services like mine, because we're not so as visible as those like national services like Safe Lives, Women's Aid and Refuge. But one thing that has come out of COVID is that it's really magnified that problem within our community as Black people with how we identify with abuse. And when I say identify with abuse is how we understand what abuse is, because often the women that use my service don't even realize that they're in abusive situations. So for example, you know, a service user that might have been experiencing an ancestral, you know, abuse in family, might not necessarily see that that's abuse, because it's quite common within certain.
What do you mean ancestral abuse?
So they might be sharing a bed with a cousin or something, and that cousin might abuse them. And in some cultures, that's actually quite common. It's not something that you see that there's anything wrong with it. Whereas obviously,
really,
UK, wow. If you look at some sort of sub-Saharan country. So my country, for example, in Mali, it's quite common for you to marry your cousin, your older cousin, at a very, very young age. Child marriage is a very big problem in my country. My mum was also a very young bride, so before I was born. So, you know, it's a big problem even still today. But if you look at those types of abuses that we experience within our community, so that's just one kind of example that I can give to you of how it may not be interpreted as abuse until somebody is in this country and they are exposed to awareness and understanding. And that's what I mean about the visibility of what is abuse, the education of what is abuse. So even in our community as Black people, we don't like to talk about our problems outside the family home. So if you know you've got a woman who is, you know, having problems in her relationship at home, she's not necessarily going to go and talk about it with all her friends or outside of the family home, because that's private. That's just something that you grow up that way, knowing that you just don't talk about your business. Whereas we know that actually it's really important for us to be able to freely express when there is a problem, when there is a struggle, and that actually it's okay to talk about these problems, and that there is help available to you if you are going through these issues. So it is a problem, and the problem is very different to how it affects those that are in the white community, as I said, because of the way that abuse is perceived within our community as a black community. For example, you know, coercive behavior, you know, it's almost part of our culture as a Black community. You know, children should be seen and not heard and not answer back and things like that. And it starts at a very, very young age, you know. So yeah, so that's all I could really say about that right now, without kind of going into detail and triggering anybody that might be listening. So apologies if anyone's listening that's being triggered by what we're saying, but there is support available to you. And if this is something that's triggered you, or you are in a situation where you resonate with what I've been talking about, and you haven't been able to reach out and find help, please do. You can come and find me online, and I can help find you the right support, because I think it's really important and really brave of you if you do.
Thank you so much. And we're definitely going to get there in regards to further support later on during this conversation. But there's so much right now to unpack in regards to what you've just said, which I think is so important. So there are women right now, as you quite rightly said, who are in abusive relationships, but may not even know they're in abusive relationships. They may be watching shows like this, but they may think, wow, like this really is kind of resonating with me. For someone like me, and being a man and everything else, what kind of signs should I really be looking out for when it comes to people who may be being abused, but I'm not aware of? Because now I just like want to be more vigilant in just seeing things in the world, because when you're exposed to new information and new knowledge, it just expands your mind. And I'm a type of person, I want to make sure that I am of service for people in multiple different ways. So what kind of things should I be looking out for? Or is it just one of these things that you can't tell?
Sometimes you can't. You know, not all situations are that obvious to see, because when you are in, or some of the experiences of the women that I've supported, when they are in that situation, it's usually been for so long that they're so good at hiding it, you know, from the outside world, because they don't want to upset the person that's causing them the harm or anything. But I think some of the signs, especially within family, what you could look out for is if you find that you've got a friend or a family member who might all of a sudden just, you know, start to withdraw, and they're not normally somebody who doesn't engage or communicate with you about their life. If somebody is having tendencies to do something like that, and they're in maybe a recent relationship, or it could have even been a long-term relationship, those are like signs which would always, for me, raise a few like red flags. Or, you know, if you're noticing that they're being a little bit secretive when it comes to that relationship, and they're wanting to kind of not talk too much about it, then that could also be a few signs as well that something might not be quite going on that's quite right in the home. I would say as well to look out for things, because abuse also affects financially as well. So some of the women that I support have been restricted from using their own money and things like that. So if you notice that perhaps maybe, you know, they do have a job, but they are not genuinely, you don't see that they're spending their money, or they don't look like they're spending their money, or they're always saying that they don't have any money, that could be another sign. Or having to get home by a certain time and things like that. They don't necessarily have a child, and you know, those are little signs that you can kind of look for when it comes to abuse. But then in young people, especially like young girls that have perhaps been experiencing like sexual abuse or sexual exploitation, you might find all of a sudden might just become very withdrawn and not be as communicative as they were, and their whole personality just completely changes. But then it's quite difficult, because if they are a teenagers do go through changes, but in my experience, you can always sense that something isn't right, and it's always good to just check in with them and let them know that it's always okay for them to talk to you. If there is anything that's bothering them, just to let them know that there's always that free, safe space for them to come and talk to you about anything, because that's one of the hardest barriers of breaking your silence with those types of situations is not knowing what you're saying to that person, how they're going to receive it, or how they're going to judge you, especially if they're young. They might think that they might have done something wrong, or usually in one particular case, actually, she was made to feel like it was her fault, like she had done something to encourage it, if that makes sense, and then made, you know, so yeah, so those are the types of things that are quite good, like flags, I would call them, to highlight what something might not be going right at home in the household.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. And okay, so if I did come across these things, one ways I can approach and talk to that person if I think it's appropriate, or I do have that kind of relationship with that individual to be able to do that. But if I don't feel like I have that kind of relationship, who could I report that to make sure that that person potentially can get some support or help for what may be going on in the home?
It really depends on what the situation is. So, for example, if it's a young person, you could potentially, you know, raise some concerns for the local authority, like social services, that you have concerns about that young person. That's normally the first sort of suggestion when it comes to young people. And then also, if you have concerns for somebody who is at home, that's an adult, I would suggest letting the police know. You can contact the police, or you can contact, you can contact the domestic abuse line, which is a free number, and they're really good at giving you advice on how to go about approaching those types of conversations with people. They're very, very helpful. But one thing I would suggest doing as well is perhaps maybe if you know somebody that is close to them, maybe having a conversation with that person to see if maybe them being made aware of this, of what your concerns are, maybe you could kind of support each other in trying to kind of help that person. So yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you so much for that. But you said something interesting about getting support from the local police and how responsive are the police or local government to these types of things, especially domestic abuse and abuse? Is it something that they really treat as a high priority, or is it something, okay, but it's not worth their, well, not even worth their time, but it's not something that they will really take serious, that they're not going to go gung ho about it, say, yes, we need to make a difference here? How serious is this really taken by local government, the police, and other social organizations?
Well, domestic abuse is taken very seriously by the local authorities, especially when it comes to young people. And the local authorities that I've engaged with anyway are not taking any risks because of so many children that have been harmed over the years and so many mistakes, things that have been missed. When it comes to the police, I've not always had a great experience with some of the ladies that I've supported in the way that they engage with those people, but those situations are different in the way that I'm kind of suggesting to you, in that you're somebody who's reporting an incident, whereas the experiences of the women who I've supported who have been engaging as victims and have reported themselves, it's been quite a challenging experience for them, because the process re-victimizes them, because they have to go through this whole kind of questioning and having to go over it. So in one respect, the police is doing what it needs to do. It's improving. It hasn't been great, I have to be honest, but it is improving, and they know that they need to make changes. Especially when it comes to Black women, because when it comes to domestic abuse being reported, it's very underreported when it comes to Black women. And that is a problem that they're trying to work, especially the government is aware of that as an issue as well. They're trying to find ways to understand why. And a lot of the reasons why women don't go to police is, one, fear of not being believed. Two, because nobody trusts the police because they're racist, they're institutionally racist. And that's the reason why services like mine exist, to help support them through those processes, so that they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of in any way, or being used to, perhaps maybe their perpetrator is known to them, with the police, that they want to try and use that person to try and, get that person, that criminal. It's a very complex in space when it comes to perpetrators and them being like criminals outside of domestic abuse. But sorry, I've literally gone off track now. Sorry about that.
That's fine, because I said we were just talking about how important or how quick are the police really to respond to these types of matters, and you literally just said how quick they are, and you talked about the institutionalized racism within the police force, even though that document came out the other day to say that, yeah, the UK is not racist.
Exactly.
or the institution is not racist. But from your experience, you've actually seen this firsthand, how the police, I guess, have not been as responsive as they could be.
No. And simply because there's barriers with immigration and things, and the police don't always understand when they're speaking to somebody, for example, who English isn't their mother tongue. So some of the things that they might say might be interpreted in a different way to what it might mean in the UK, like to a white person. So those are some of the barriers which cause that are problematic when it comes to some of the women that I support, that when they're engaging with the police. And then some have immigration issues, so they're scared of the police because they don't want to be sent back to their countries, you know. So yeah, it's a very complex, big web of problems when it comes to Black women and domestic abuse. And actually, unfortunately, women who are affected by domestic abuse or sexual violence who are migrant women are not protected underneath the domestic abuse bill, which is another challenge. So in one respect, I do agree and support that the government are working towards trying to improve, you know, services for protecting women. But then on the other hand, they're not protecting all of my women. They're not valuing all of my women, you know, just because they don't have the right passport. They're not considered to be able to be fully protected just because of their passport, which is wrong. And that's something that I speak very openly about when I go to events and on social media, and there's a lot of people out there who are campaigning as well about that. But we live in hope, and all we can continue to do is just continue to support the women that we can who need the help, that are not being able to access services as much as we can, and hope that things will change in the future. But the great thing is that we do now have a domestic abuse bill. So that is one thing that I'm really, really pleased about. It's taken a long time, a lot of people shouting, and you know, but yeah, we do have domestic abuse bill now, and there are.
Was you championing that as well?
Oh, 100%. I signed an open letter last year with Safe Lives. I supported, you know, the London Victims Commission for International Women's Day. You know, I'm fully supportive of championing, you know, protecting our women, because if we don't, then, you know, one less person who's going to get the support. So if they can hear somebody like me or one of my peers who are also working on these campaigns, then that's one less person that gets harm or can get out of that situation. And also, I think we also need to be having the discussion about why are we always approaching the conversation of domestic abuse, and the problem being, why does she not leave, or why does she not come and get me? And that's something that I'm also quite passionate about talking about openly. And there is actually a perpetrator strategy, which I'm fully supporting, that was launched this year through Respect, Drive and Safe Lives, and we're basically asking the government to prioritise a perpetrator strategy, because we feel that we need to be changing the conversation towards why is he doing what he's doing, or why is she harming in the way that she does, because women also do harm. So that's a big strategy, which really is something that the government are also considering. And some of the round tables that I've sat in has been really I've been quite humbled to hear how much people are really trying to push this forward. Before that, I was very skeptical, and you know, all these big, you know, services and organisations, they only really prioritise white people, but actually they're really wanting to listen now. They really want to understand that there are problems that are existing within our community that we need them to hear, so that they can also help change, which they can help change. So yeah, I'm happy to always be part of those types of conversations.
And I think that's, listen, right now, you're like my superhero right now, and my hat's off to you and to the work that you've been doing. Okay, so let's talk about the work that you have been doing. Let's talk about Amour Destiné, and which stands for, listen, I've been doing a little bit of my research. Was it Love Your Destiny?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about your business. you started this to help women off the back of your mum not getting the support that she deserves, and now there's a wonderful opportunity, this wonderful ecosystem that you have created. So talk to me about someone's journey by them coming into your business. What does that look like for a person coming in? What do they go through? What do they get? What are the benefits from it?
Okay, yeah. So my organization, it's a holistic approach of how we support women. So when a woman comes to our service, we always assess her needs, and she can access mentoring support, and then there's also advocacy support. But 9 times out of 10, she comes to us through the advocacy clinic because she comes to us with a problem, and normally that problem is either she's in a crisis, or and she needs support accessing either free social justice, or she needs support with understanding where she can get other access to services that she might need. So she would come for our service, and we would assess her, and then we would basically address her problems as an individual, because that's one of the most important parts of my service that I really want to maintain, in that everybody is treated as an individual, and we are able to tailor the support that we give to them so that they can really achieve their goals. Because the idea is that when they come to us with their problem, we help to solve those problems, and then we start to help them to develop in other areas. So we introduce them to mentors who can, on the program, teach them how to improve their well-being, how to cope, how to figure out how to build a healthy relationship with themselves and with other people. And it's very focused on well-being. And also the sessions are not just one-to-one, we also have group sessions, so they get to meet other women who are also on the program, who they can connect with, who they can perhaps relate to, and then we go on to creating our destiny. So once we've focused on healing, understanding how to, cope through some of our problems, because I'm one of those types of people who always like to let people know that yes, we've been through these problems, more problems might come again in the future. So they've not stopped us before and they can't stop us in the future, but let's find other ways to make sure that they don't hold us still in one place, because sometimes problems can. It's happened to me, and I'm very honest and open with the women about that. But it's all about teaching them how to keep going, and then also to show them that they can create their own destiny, that those things don't define where they end up in life. So then we start to introduce them, after the well-being section, we then introduce them to what that might look like. So it might be that, through employability workshops, that they might want to develop a CV and go and look for a job and pursue a career, or it could be a business startup workshop that we introduce them to and might spark a passion that they might have, and they can go and start a side hustle, for example. And then we also introduce them to running their own session. So towards the end, so once on a Wednesday evening, we call it a mentee-led session. So then they then lead a session with the other women who they've been going through the program with from the beginning, and they run a session that they've planned themselves on something they're really passionate about. So for example, one of our ladies really loves bullet journaling, so she taught all the ladies how to bullet journal, one evening.
Okay, what's bullet journal? Now I'm intrigued.
Oh, bullet journaling. Oh, it's brilliant. It's basically you're creating like your own diary in like a plain kind of journal with like dots in it, like very faint dots, and you draw how you want your diary to look. So it's very visual, and you plan your month out, and you can put things in there like a mood tracker and color those in and put your to-do list in there. And it's just a really nice, creative, personalized way of journaling instead of just writing stuff down on lined paper. And so she taught us how to plan a monthly bullet journal, and everyone came to the, we did our planning for our own month, and that was really fun. And so that's all part of helping them to develop their confidence after going through the wellbeing sessions and everything, because that's something that's really quite important to me, that towards the end of the program, that we start to really see them come alive, and knowing what skills they have, that they've unpacked them themselves, and they're sharing them with each other, which is really, really beautiful. So that's how my program looks. It's also quite very focused on art. So art is something that we teach the women as a tool to help with practicing self-care and their well-being. So we do lots of painting. We send everybody a pack, so everybody gets an art pack as well at the beginning of the program. So yeah, so that's what it looks like. In terms of access,
are you fully funded, or just something that women have to pay for themselves to come on board?
Yeah, so that's what I was just going to say. So to access the service, it's been free because we've been funded by the National Lottery in partnership with the government, but that funding's just come to an end, actually. So at the moment, I'm self-funding, but I do have one part of my service which is funded by Safe Lives. I've become a Safe Lives partner as a grant giver. So anyone who is perhaps really in need of crisis intervention, or to help the women with building their resilience, I've got support from Save Lives that I can give grants to some of the ladies on the programme. So it might be that she's a woman who's an asylum seeker, so she has no recourse to public funds. So I can make sure that she's got what she needs in terms of basic essentials and things. Or it might mean that you are somebody who has removed yourself from a long-term abusive relationship where your money was restricted and you were emotionally abused, or it's a domestic abusive situation, but you've now moved on and you're trying to rebuild your life and your independence. So for example, I gave someone some money so that she can buy a car, so it's really about helping the women to feel empowered through that specific fund. So yeah, so that's who we're funded by at the moment, and we're continuing to try and get more funding, which I'm sure we will. We've got support. We've got people that give us donations as well. So yeah.
Listen, if you ever, and I know we did kind of touch upon this before, if you ever look to do a reward-based crowdfunding campaign, we do charge Exclusive Visions, I say £2,000 to do it. But I know George and Alex would be happy to waiver that for you and help run your campaign for free. So therefore you can actually do that, because we love what you're doing. So if this can actually help raise 10, 20, 30,000 pounds for your business to help women, even just for a year or two, then we'll be more than happy to support you to do that as well. So that's an offer where Exclusive Visions is happy to put on the table for you if you ever look to do that, which I think would be fantastic if you do anyway, because more people need your support. So yeah. All right. So saying all that, just finishing on this particular subject about finances, how has the government supported your initiative? Because this sounds something which they should really be backing. Has that been the case with you?
Well, my funding was government funding. It was distributed through the National Lottery. Okay. So I got to access that funding through the government. But I am now looking at local government support. So I have got some meetings set up. I don't want to talk about them live, but
yeah, that's fine. You got some things in the background. That's all I want to hear. I want to make sure that your service definitely has the support that it deserves, because what you're doing is changing and empowering lives. So, all right, we've got that. Cool. So, in regards to anything else that your business, like I believe you have merchandise or products people can actually purchase online.
Yes, so we have our Destiny Creators box, which you can purchase on Etsy. And those boxes, we use them in some of our workshops as well. And every woman gets gifted a box. So this is one way that anyone can actually support us, in that they can maybe donate a box. So purchasing a box that we can give to a lady that joins the next 6-month program, or you can purchase a box and we can send you a box. So you just need to let us know what you're gifting at the checkout. So yeah, so there's 2 boxes, and then there's also canvas as well. So you can purchase those on Etsy, and that's all we have in terms of merchandise at the moment.
And that's enough.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say what we're going to do in Exclusive Visions, once again, put ourselves out there. We're going to purchase 2 boxes, 2 canvas to help women who are coming through your program. So we'll purchase that as well. And we're going to be pushing this out there as well. So we're going to do a little competition, throw this out there around the canvas and stuff. And yeah, so at least we know we are supporting here. We're not just having you on here. We really love what you're doing. So well done. All right. Are there any upcoming events that you've got going on?
We don't have any upcoming events going on, but I do have a nomination, which I've been nominated for National Diversity Award. Somebody nominated me. I was so surprised when I got the email. And I found out who it was that nominated me as well. And it's just such an honor that the person that nominated me, I just can't believe that person nominated me. She's amazing. She's a care experience journalist, and she's doing amazing work. And I connected with her this year because I've actually joined a collective called Reclaim, which is all about elevating the voice of the care experience person in the UK and trying to help them as like improving how people communicate with us as care experience people, because often what happens, especially when it comes to media and charities and organizations, they generally will approach you and want you to do a story, and there's no kind of aftercare or anything. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve the way that we're handled within the care experienced community, and that we're treated respectfully, and that we get the support that we need, because our stories are important, and there are stories and they belong to us, and we should be able to have that freedom to be able to share them with whoever we want, and them not be changed and things like that, because sometimes when our stories are shared, things are kind of adapted, or they're used for people's campaigns when they make lots of money, and and it's just wrong. So we're just trying to improve that. And then also we really want to improve trauma informed approaches when it comes to care experience young people, how organizations deal and handle with care experience people, that we want them to have more access to well-being support services, so that they can, for example, when they're going to get their files, there's been really horrendous stories I've heard of people who have gone to get their files and just not treated in a very humane way. So I think we, as a collective, we've all got our own experiences of trauma being in care that we want to change. So check that out as well online. We called Reclaim. But yeah, how did I even get onto that? Sorry.
Hey, listen, yeah, I love the information coming through. You do a lot. You've been nominated. You're still doing a lot of other organizations. So that's absolutely fantastic. So no worries. So there's any golden gems, because I said you also have your own podcast as well, right?
Yes. My podcast is called the Destiny Creators Podcast, and I invite women to come and chat on my podcast who are inspiring, who have overcome something traumatic in life, and they've been able to share those experiences. And we talk about different things. It's a very open podcast. We talk about religion, politics, business, relationships, anything goes, but there is always a theme at the end. I always like to take out something really inspiring that they want to share with the listeners, to encourage whoever's listening, and that becomes the title of the episode. But we're now going into, I think, our 6th episode of season 2, so that's 16 so far. So it's been really good experience.
Lovely. I love hearing this stuff, and I've got so many wonderful women who I love to put forward to your show as well. So yeah, so if you could send me a link so I could forward it onto them, that would be wonderful. Well, Annie, this has been an amazing episode. Love having you today. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the kind of things we're doing on Exclusive Visions podcast, Love, Life and Business. We have wonderful entrepreneurs like Annie coming on board, showcasing all the great stuff that she's doing for the community. So if you like what we're doing, subscribe, ring that notification bell, share this content, or just go onto Patreon. You'll see the link in our description about everything that we do. So this is the end of the show, and you know how we love to end this. You know what? Always remember, be true, be you, stay happy.